Good evening, everyone. It's Thursday, November 3rd, 2016. I'm Alexandria Garcia.
And I'm Kayla Coughlin. Welcome to the Local Live.
Residents of Mamaroneck will vote on 2 referendum proposals on the ballot come November 8th. Find out what these proposals are coming up.
We recap our local debates in preparation for Election Day 2016.
139 Mamaroneck high school students will be traveling to Pennsylvania this weekend. Find out why coming up.
A Larchmont man wins big at a local casino. This and more local stories in our segment, In the Media.
Our Local Live sports producers bring us the highlights from this week's varsity sports.
In tonight's live roundtable, we sit down with local Democrats and Republicans to talk presidential politics. With the election days away, we're taking your calls, emails, and tweets.
On November 8th, residents of Mamaroneck will not only have to vote for the next president of the United States, but they'll also have to vote for 2 important referendum proposals that will affect the village of Mamaroneck. The referendum proposals that were passed on September 6th were initially introduced by the Democratic majority, and it is now up to the residents of Mamaroneck to either vote yes or no for each of the important proposals come election night. In order to know what the referendums are about, make sure to take a look at the in-depth report coming up next about each of the proposals so it can make you well informed before you cast your vote on November 8th. This November 8th, in addition to choosing your local trustees, you'll have to vote for 2 referendum questions. The first one is regarding to remove the mayor's ability to appoint members to the Zoning Board of Appeals and the planning boards. And the second one is to remove his power to appoint the village attorney. In each case, a yes vote will transfer the power from the mayor to the Board of Trustees. It was a Democratic majority who introduced the 2 referendum proposals back on August 15th during a Board of Trustees meeting. But it was not until September 6th that the board held a public hearing and passed the referendum, causing different reactions within residents in the village of Mamaroneck. Some of them questioned the legality of the meeting.
Actually impact each one of us as village members very significantly. It's not beside the point. The decisions that are made on the planning board and the ZBA affect us very significantly on a day-to-day basis as what's going on our roads, in our schools, in our streets, in our communities.
This is not about personalities. It's about making fair laws and then offering them to the public for a vote.
Seems to me that this is just a power grab you're working for the Democratic Party. You're not working for the people of Mamaroneck. You're just trying to grab the power you couldn't grab in the last election. So you're trying to do it this way.
This is unbelievable on both sides. I'm taking nobody's side, but it's an illegal meeting and we're voting on it. Outrageous. Outrageous.
The point, the mayor asserts it's an illegal meeting. That's not been established. So we shouldn't repeat it as fact, okay? The meeting notice went out.
You know, go home, each and every one of you, and listen to what went on here tonight. And it's an embarrassment to live in this village.
After a very long public hearing, the Democratic majority passed the referendum to be added on this upcoming ballot. Now, with the elections fast approaching, the Local Live decided to go to the streets to speak to residents about their knowledge of the referendum. So have you been aware of the referendum taking place?
No, this is the first I'm hearing about it, actually.
Oh, no.
You're not?
No.
Actually, no, I haven't.
Okay.
I live on the avenue, so I haven't seen anything either.
No.
The lack of knowledge within residents pushed us to investigate and speak with public officials to learn more about the chronological legal context of the referendum. In this process, on October 17th, Mayor Norman Rosenblum filed a lawsuit against the Board of Trustees. But does he have a case? What does the law say about appointments? Why appointing the village attorney, the members of the Planning Board, and Zoning Board of Appeals is so controversial?
So I filed papers with the court in front of the judge, and it's a show cause order, and they have to answer it. I'm presuming they would answer it. They'd be silly not to, because that's the action they took. They have to show why they believe that my action, my request, is not proper. Now, the judge will take testimony from both sides, and he will make a decision as to is it proper, and they should find that the laws were illegal and the process is wrong, or in fact just go ahead on the ballot. Now, the irony is it's already on the ballot.
While it was convoluted, to say the least, it was by the book, and we checked it out with state authorities. All the timing was done, a little confused, but it was done right. He says it wasn't. The problem he may face, and I believe he will, and I think it's going to be resolved on Tuesday, is that my read, at least, of the Board of Election requirements is that there's a 5-day window from the time of filing in which someone could raise an objection.
He's over those 5 days.
Well, long past those 5 days.
To understand the problem about appointments, it's necessary to first understand the roles of the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Paul Noto is a former Village of Mamaroneck mayor and an attorney that represents businesses and individuals throughout Westchester in land use, zoning, and environmental matters.
The Planning Board handles all kinds of what we call site plan review. So they make determinations on whether or not something could be built in a particular location or not, how it can be built. They can, limit size. They can require landscaping and other amenities to make it a better project. The zoning board is a little different. That board is established by the state law. It is what we call a quasi-judicial board. So they actually handle appeals from the building inspectors. They only hear appeals. They don't render advisory opinions. They don't really give you a lot of feedback. Like the planning board is much more interactive. You would go and you get their opinions, and they'll say, look, we think your tree should be here, your building should be a little lower, or your building should be wider, or you need to put different types of window. I mean, that's the kind of things the planning board does. They're much more interactive, and they really shape how the community looks because they approve projects, and I think they have a very important role in the development of the entire community.
The reason it's on the ballot is to do something that changes New York state law. It becomes a mandatory referendum, which means it has to be on a ballot.
While Norman has been the mayor, during this process, it has nothing to do with Norman. Okay. It has to do with the role of the mayor in our village.
While the mayor bases his defense in the 2010 state law, which grants him the power of appointing board members and replacing vacancies, the Democrats believe that the power of appointing belongs to the Board of Trustees, as it was before the 2010 law, which passed with a Republican majority. But what happened in 2010?
It's relevant for those who are interested in the history that those powers of appointment only date from 2010. They're only 6 years old. And you'd have to go back to the history of what happened then and read the minutes and interview, as we did, who were the trustees, and to understand how it happened. But how it happens is really not important. I mean, what's really important is where we are and what these powers are and why they are inappropriate for the democratic function of the Village of Mamaroneck.
The Local Law 22, created in 2010, disbanded the previous process of appointment done by the Board of Trustees. This law says that the power of appointment would be in accordance to the state law and would transfer the power of appointing to the mayor, as well as fill vacancies for the boards. But the content of the law describes not only the number of board members and their terms, but it also authorizes alternate members for the planning and zoning boards. In 2010, the main concern fell into bringing alternate members to the boards and not into transferring the power of appointment to the mayor.
The Board of Trustees to appoint an alternate to both the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. The purpose is akin to a alternate juror. There have been several situations where applicants appear before both the Planning Board and the Zoning Board where they would have to make a decision that they want to go forward with 4 votes versus 5 votes.
However, in 2011, a new law emerged. This law is almost identical to the 2010 law, with the main difference that it eliminates the alternates. This law was passed with a Democratic majority. Finch told us on an email, quote, "This was a monumental change in 2010 hidden within the matter of alternates."
He was able to put 2 people on these important land use boards without even a vote of the other trustees at the beginning, just a unilateral replacement appointment that in effect have continued since then. That doesn't sound right to me. That doesn't sound like the democratic process. It doesn't sound like the way we should be doing appointments to these very important land use boards, which is the reason why I believe they must change, and that's what November 8th is about.
The mayor appoints members of the zoning board and the planning board, and the chairman. But again, it's not only my appointment, but it's got to be ratified by the Board of Trustees. So there's a parallel in there. There's another aspect to the local law, which is a New York State law, also clearly says if there is a vacancy due to other than the full term, in other words, someone resigns halfway through, the mayor has the authority unilaterally to appoint to fill that term until the next term.
Therefore, the holdovers during Rosenblum's term triggered the referendum, and it also led to the second referendum regarding the appointment of the village attorney. We were looking to hear from former Democratic mayors in the village of Mamaroneck, but they declined to speak with us.
This is where you sit down and you work it out. I mean, that's why I don't understand why this is so difficult, why 5 people can't sit down and compromise. Shocking to me, but it is what it is.
The lawsuit that Mayor Norman Rosenblum initiated on October 17th ended on Thursday, October 27th, as the state Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Democratic majority. Supreme Court Justice Lawrence H. Ecker had decided that the meeting notices were valid, meaning that the referendums will still be on the ballot come November 8th. We've witnessed that many residents in the village of Mamaroneck are not informed of the referendum due to the lack of information given throughout the village. This referendum can potentially change how politics happen in the village of Mamaroneck, so make sure you are well informed before you cast your vote come November 8th. Reporting for the Local Live, I'm Alexandria Garcia.
With Election Day only a few days away, it's important to stay up to date on the local debates that have happened in our community. First up, we had the League of Women Voters of Mamaroneck and Larchmont debate on October 26th. This debate had many local and state officials discussing various issues affecting our area. Assemblyman Steve Otis, Democrat from New York District 91, is running uncontested, and he spoke on the Clean Water Project, finding ways to upgrade the 911 emergency response system, boosting the local economy and education, among other issues.
Democratic State Senator George Latimer debated Republican Julie Killian on lead in our drinking water, climate change, and the Army Corps of Engineers project in the village of Mamaroneck.
Also in the village of Mamaroneck, 6 candidates are vying for 3 spots on the Board of Trustees, including incumbent Democratic trustee Leon Potok, along with Democrats Victor Tafur and Keith Waite. All of the Democratic candidates spoke in favor of the controversial referendum. However, all of the Republican candidates, Dennis Cuccinella, Maria DeRose, and J. Malt Stalkert, were opposed. Ralph's Ice Cream, land development, and opiate abuse were also hot topics during the debate.
Last night, all Village of Mamaroneck trustee candidates attended the 2016 Mamaroneck Village Trustee Debate, sponsored by the Oriental Point Association and moderated by WNBC's Today in New York anchor Michael Gargulio.
We want to remind you that you can watch both debates online at www.lmctv.org. And don't forget to tune in on election night for the up-to-minute results and interviews from party headquarters. We'll have special guests joining us live throughout the evening, including Assemblyman Steve Otis.
Mamaroneck High students are packing their bags once again and traveling to Pennsylvania this weekend. Early in the year, teachers Joe Liberti and Evan Madden took their students to New Hampshire to cover the primaries, and others went to the Democratic National Convention. This time, they are heading to 3 of Pennsylvania's most competitive counties, where they will be reporting and volunteering for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump's campaigns right before Tuesday's big election. 83 AP Government and Politics students will be phone banking and going door to door for both candidates, while 56 journalism students will be reporting on the field, producing audio, print, and photo stories that will appear on their website. In a media advisory sent out by the Mamaroneck School District, Evan Madden said, quote, "Mr. Liberti and I can't think more of a more productive real-life experience than this. These are the exact skills we want our students entering the world with. We're looking forward to the updates you'll be tweeting via the handle at MAMK_Prez16. Here's Jack Wells with what's trending in the media.
A gun shop in Harrison is planning to open its doors in the upcoming weeks. This is causing quite the uproar among local residents, who have signed a petition opposing the store. More than 2,000 people have already signed it. If you'd like to sign the petition or just learn more details, visit the Daily Voice. Also from the Larchmont and Mamaroneck Daily Voice, a Larchmont man won $150,000 at the Empire City Casino in Yonkers. The Wheel of Fortune slot machine certainly lived up to its name for this man on Friday. This is the second jackpot winning for a Lower Hudson Valley resident in under 2 months. Also this week, Governor Andrew Cuomo endorsed incumbent state senator George Latimer, who is seeking his 3rd term in the Senate. Cuomo stated, "It is my pleasure to support and endorse the re-election of George Latimer." Latimer is running against Republican candidate Julie Killian, a Rye City Councilwoman. You can read Cuomo's full endorsement on lowhud.com. Westchester unemployment rates have increased in the month of September. Unemployment was 4.2%, but is now 4.4%. To learn more about the unemployment rates in New York and Westchester, visit the Larchmont Mamaroneck patch. Liz Weil, a local author, released her book, The Candidate, earlier this month. This is Weil's 16th book. The fictional book is set to mimic the 2016 presidential election. To learn more about the book and her upcoming book, The Separatist, visit the Mamaroneck Daily Voice. In the patch, this past week, FBI Director James Comey has managed to create quite the stir regarding Hillary Clinton's emails. The FBI reopened the case concerning Clinton's emails while investigating former Congressman Anthony Weiner. And that's it for this week's In the Media. I'm Jack Wells.
Now it's time for some local trivia. Then on tonight's roundtable, we're talking next week's historic presidential election. Stay tuned.
Election 2016, only 5 days to go in a most unusual, historic presidential election. Have you decided? Have you?
Yes.
What did or will help you push that lever? 2 of our guests are vocal advocates for a candidate, and 1 is a distinguished professor of political science. We're going to be having a civil and respectful discussion about the November 8th election and after.
And we'd like you to join the conversation. Who are you supporting? Did you decide not to vote? Well, let's hear from you. You can call us, email, or send a tweet. The contact information is on your screen. Maura?
And now our guests. Tom Murphy, a Democrat with her, Hillary Clinton, and Mamaroneck Town Councilman. John Nadler is a Chappaqua resident who wants to make America great again with Donald Trump. And Dr. Jeannie Zaino is a professor of political science from Iona College. Dr. Zaino has appeared on Fox, CNN, Al Jazeera English, and MSNBC, to name a few. And hopefully she can help all of us put this election in context. So John, I'm going to start with you and focusing on the things that you like about your candidate. Did you support Donald Trump in the primary, and what made you decide that he was your guy?
Yes, I did support Donald Trump from the first day, from June 16th, 2015, from day one. I was very excited that he decided to run.
And what was it that excited you about him?
Well, I'm with Trump because political correctness is killing us, and immigration laws need to be enforced, and immigrants need to be vetted. Our country needs strengthening, and militarily, economically, and infrastructure-wise, and Common Core isn't working, and Trump is different. He's not a politician. He will return manufacturing, and he puts us first, and he gets things done on time and under budget, and something Washington doesn't.
Okay.
And Tom, you originally were feeling the burn. When did you pivot to Hillary?
No, that's true. I was a Bernie supporter. I was one of the 4 elected officials in Westchester County that supported Bernie. And I'd just like to point out, I'm a statistical anomaly. I'm a white male who didn't finish college who supports Hillary. So after the primary, and I've been a Democrat my whole life since I was 18. And after the primary, after Bernie wasn't going to get it, I switched to supporting Hillary because I think at this point in time, she is the only viable option. She has the experience, she has the knowledge, and she has the temperament that we need as president. You know, she's not going to make rash decisions. She has a history of working. You know, what we have to remember is before all the mishigash of this election, when Hillary was a senator and Hillary was a Secretary of State, you know, she was receiving praise from Republicans. So that all turned around once she said she wanted to be president. So I think we got to look at the whole picture and decide on November 8th what is best for the country moving forward. I mean, I know that there's a lot of things that need to change in this country, and that's probably why I was supporting Bernie. But I don't think you knock over the whole table just because you don't like the meal.
Okay. I want to start with an observation here, which is that, at least from what I've seen, and it's not a scientific sampling of any sort, but driving around our community, I have seen very few presidential candidates supporting signs. Until this week, I'd only seen one, and I just saw another one today. I haven't seen many car stickers, and our producers actually had a hard time finding a local Trump supporter who wanted to appear on the show. There are Trump supporters. So Professor Zaino, my question is, does this surprise you? This, what I call the absence or maybe reticence to show or display who you're supporting or voting for?
It doesn't surprise me, number one, because we're in New York. And so, you know, while both of the candidates have their headquarters here, they're both New Yorkers, and this is a very New York-centered campaign on the one hand. On the other hand, New York is really not up for grabs. And so neither campaign has put a lot of work on the ground. They've been here to raise money. They've been here for their headquarters. They've been here because they live here. But they don't have people on the ground that are organizing in the way they are in places like Florida and Ohio and Nevada and Colorado. So that's part of it. I think another part of it is a very different perspective, which is that this is such a contentious election that I do think that even people who support Trump, who support Hillary Clinton, who support, you know, one of the third-party candidates, feel a little bit reticent in some cases to express their support for fear of, you know, offending or for fear of, you know, putting out a neighbor. So while you do see signs, and I have seen signs, I agree with you, there's not a huge number. And I think part of it may be that is there's a fear that while I may support Donald Trump, to do so may, if I'm a woman, make me feel like I'm not being supportive of women in general. Or if I do support Hillary Clinton, it may make me feel like, you know, I'm supporting the establishment and I'm not, you know, really, you know, a person who my neighbors might want to, you know, associate with, if you will. So I think there is some of that out there as well.
Well, let me ask Tom and John, have you found that this election and your position, has it affected your relationships with friends and neighbors? Who wants to go first?
I will say this. You know, like I said, I work in a very blue-collar industry. I'm an elevator mechanic, and a lot of the guys I work with are supporting Trump. I'd say the majority are probably supporting Hillary, but a lot are supporting Trump. And you know what? I disagree with them, but you know, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm able to step back, and I realize that, you know, I might not agree with you today, but I might have to work with you tomorrow, and you know, everybody has a reason, and it's not worth losing relationships. You know, I'm on Facebook, and I have a few friends that I grew up with, and I've had a couple of fights with them, and I had to, you know, go offline and say to them, listen, you know, at the end of the day, this is going to be over, and one of these two, you know, listen, you know, I don't have a fervency for Hillary Clinton like I had for Bernie. I understand why people have problems with Hillary Clinton, but life is about choices. And for me, this is an easy choice. But, you know, people have other opinions. Obviously, John has another opinion. And, you know, I think...
So you're not cutting off your friends?
No, absolutely not. I don't have that many friends. I can start cutting people off.
What about you, John? Has it affected your relationships?
Well, most people where I live are, I'd say 2/3 of them are Hillary supporters. We have signs all throughout town that are primarily Hillary.
She does live there.
Hillary, yes, because I live in Chappaqua. I have my own Trump signs on my porch so they don't get stolen from my lawn. And I'm on Facebook as well. I have my own page, and I have a couple of other pages, Westchester County and Neighbors of Hillary Clinton for Donald Trump for president.
But do you have friends who support Hillary, and
yes,
and has it created
I
problems
do.
Between?
No, my friends, no. But I'm in Chappaqua 28 years, and I do know the whole town, and I don't get the same reception that I used to get since this election started taking place. It's a little bit of a cold shoulder, just a curt hi or a wave, where people would stop and we'd talk and have quick discussions about children or whatever.
So, Professor, I'm going to turn it back to you because I've seen wars on Facebook. People, and I've also seen people saying, I'm taking a break from social media because I just don't want to hear what anyone else is saying. How are we going to get past this?
You know, it's only 5 days to go now, so hang in. And I do think it's true. I think one of the things we stress at the college and in class is that, you know, you want to have collegial discussions like we're having here, where you want to give people the option of saying what they believe and having them listen to you, because you can learn an awful lot from somebody who doesn't agree with you. And so I think one of the dangers with the current media world that we live in is that we can all pick and choose what we want to listen to. So if I'm a conservative, I can pick and choose conservative media. Same thing for liberals. And I think there's a danger there, because I think there is something wonderfully instructive about talking to somebody who you know you disagree with, and you disagree with at the end after they talk, but you always learn something from listening, and you always pick up a bit of information that can make you, a fuller person. So try to encourage that collegial dialogue. And I think as we get through this election and beyond it, you know, Trump supporters, if Clinton wins, aren't going to be happy, and vice versa if he wins for Clinton supporters. But we do get through these things and move forward, and we have a political life in the aftermath that we have to work on, because we have a lot of important issues to address in this country.
You know, as somebody who pays a lot of attention to television, I wonder if we could indict the media for their role in this election. Do you feel one way or another? I mean, is television responsible for Donald Trump, for instance, for his political success?
Television has given Donald Trump a lot of free media coverage, that's for sure. But as somebody who goes on both Fox and MSNBC and everywhere in between and has wonderful friends in the media, I never indict the media, because the media are doing their job. When you have a media in a capitalist system, they are going to do what they can to get ratings. So as much as I hate to say this, I think the people who have to be indicted if you don't like the coverage are us, because we are the ones who watch. And if we watch something enough, they will put it on. So I always tell my students, if we were that interested in hard policy discussions, they would be on TV 24 hours a day.
So where would you go to get objective news now?
I think you go to a variety of places.
So you're saying you mix and match.
You mix and match, and you have very good journalists out there who are giving very good coverage, but I think you mix and match. But my point is that, you know, we get what we pay for. They will put on what they think are going to get ratings. And so, of course, there are more liberal and conservative editorial boards. But we also have a role in this, and if we were that interested in hardcore policy discussions, C-SPAN's ratings would be a lot higher than they are.
Can I just jump in there? Because my problem with the media, and it's both MSNBC and Fox and everything in between, is that it just seems so superficial. Okay, there's a letter from the FBI. Okay, we're going to report that all week, or something to do with Trump. I'm not trying to, I'm just talking about in general here. But they don't, it's a one-day story, and nobody asks probing questions. Nobody does research. And I don't know if that's just because they have to have something new every day because it's a TV show.
Well, I think that's exactly the point. Is, you know, we talked a lot about the fact when the Billy Bush, Donald Trump came out, and then the Hillary Clinton, the WikiLeaks dropped the same day, and all you heard about was the Billy Bush story, in part because sex sells, and that's my point. You know, we will watch that story. Where who is John Podesta and why do we care about his 35,000 emails is a lot harder story to sell. And so that, I think, explains in part all of our frustration. But my only point is, while the media obviously can be a lot better, we also have a role, because we turn it on and watch what is titillating as opposed to what is necessarily substantive, and they will feed us whatever gives them ratings.
If you ever read 1984, it's more and more like that. You know, that the news shows become entertainment, and you know, They used to, there's kids sitting in the audience. They used to be people who asked hard questions, you know,
And in a very different social media environment, I would say, though, because we had a lot fewer choices then. And I always talk, my father is very frustrated by this election, but I say, Dad, when there were 3 networks, you didn't have as many choices. Now there's choices, and those 3 networks can't afford to sit on hard policy issues. So they're all suffering. Look at the AT&T merger with Time Warner now that's going on.
You're right.
So it's a complicated issue that I think has less to do with ideology and more to do with business for these big corporations.
That's a good point.
How concerned, if at all, should we be about voter fraud and or voter suppression? 2 sides of the same coin, or?
There is very little hard evidence of voter fraud at the polling booth as Donald Trump was discussing it. So there's very little evidence of that. There is always problems at the polls, but there's very little evidence of voter fraud in the country in the way he was discussing it. So I think a bigger issue to be concerned about is the fact that since the decision in the Shelby County versus Holder decision overturning the Voting Rights Act, you have seen a storm of states across the country who have passed laws to make voter registration more difficult. That's a real concern. Voter fraud at the polls is much less of a concern statistically, although certainly it does happen. And as we move into an online environment and all the challenges that raises, we have more challenges there. So it's not to say it doesn't exist, but it's not probably the most pressing problem we have in this country.
So what happens after the election? How do you guys go about it if Hillary wins and if Trump wins? John, you've been quiet for a moment. You get to talk.
You threw a curveball at me there. I really don't know because I'm so intensely involved. I have over 5,000 followers on Facebook, and I'm really concerned about my 3 sons. One's an older teenager, the other 2 were in their early to mid-20s, and I'm really concerned about their future. And my very strong, heartfelt opinion is that Hillary is not going to take them on the path that was always looking to have them be. As far as
will you accept the election results?
If Trump wins.
Okay, and Tom.
I'll accept the election results. We've been having elections every 4 years since 1790s, and we've always accepted the results. And I think that's a core tenet of why we are surviving democracy, is because we don't start shooting at each other after every election. We're not a banana republic yet, and I hope that I will not be happy if Trump wins. I'll not be a happy camper, but I'm not moving. I'm not, I will redouble my efforts to make this country a more progressive nation. And, if I die banging my head against the wall, then, I had to go some way, but I don't think that it's going to be the end of the world. I think it'll be a very difficult time for America, but America, I was coming over here tonight, and I was dropping my son off, and he said, "Has it ever been this divided?" And I said, yeah, there was a time called the 60s, and it was pretty divided, and that was in my lifetime and in our lifetime. And this was a pretty divided nation. And I remember being a kid in '68 with the riots and all of that, and it looked like the nation was coming apart. But we reached down and we grabbed it, and we didn't. So I think we'll survive Trump, we'll survive Hillary. And I think, but the important thing, as Jeannie said so well before, is that we start talking to each other. No matter who wins, I wish we could have a national therapy session at the end of this and just say, there's got to be a way we can get along together.
Jeannie, how odd or concerning is it that Donald Trump has said he may not accept the results? I mean, Al Gore accepted the results ultimately.
Not initially.
Well, okay.
It is concerning because, you know, we all have to step back and say there are laws in place that if you are within a certain percentage, the vote is, you can challenge the vote legally in any state in this country. And certainly Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and their teams have the right to do that. And they certainly should and would do that, which is what Al Gore did in Florida and what George W. Bush did in Florida, rightly so. So we have a process in place, a legal process in place for challenges. I think what is concerning is not that, because legal challenges are open to him, as he has said, and they should be. I think what is concerning is if you're not within that margin and you are looking to make hay out of something where there doesn't seem to be any real evidence. So that is concerning, I think, certainly, because, you know, the legitimacy of the government is critical to all of us. So that, I think, is something we have to think about. And to the earlier point, you know, I think it's very common for us in our time to look and say, this is the most awful election we've ever had. Things have gone haywire. This is because we're in the moment. It is certainly not.
Really?
If you look back, the 1960s you mentioned, you can go back to the election of 1800, the election of 1824. You hear the things people were saying about their fellow candidates, their opponents. It was horrific. The difference is we live in a different technological time. So social media, Facebook, I mean, could you imagine if there was Facebook in 1800, 1824, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, all these things that have changed and were consumed by this 24 hours a day? That's different. But what's not different is human nature. And politics is always tough. It's always hard. Campaigns in this country and every country are dirty. And that's how they operate. So it is a lot of the technical changes that make it feel this way, but it's certainly not the reality that this is the toughest campaign we've ever heard of.
I'd like to interrupt us here for a second. We have a viewer who's got a question, and it's, what can you say about your candidates' policies? Debates have been about the candidates themselves, not so much the issues. Can we, John, do you want to handle that? What about Mr. Trump's policies?
Well, I feel very strongly about Mr. Trump's policies, and with respect to immigration, respect to jobs, respect to tax cuts, respects to our veterans that have been totally neglected. It's just a shame about that, and if I could stress that point. And
has he, for instance,
and I think he wants to cut the bureaucracy, the red tape, and get things done.
Right, and those are admirable goals, but has he given you enough details that you're confident that he can achieve those goals?
I've reviewed his website, and I looked at all his issues, and he's given answers to all his goals. I've also looked at Hillary Clinton's website, and I saw about an equal amount of response. Mostly I watch them speak on TV, and I most definitely hear more from Trump about what he's going to do than what Hillary's saying she's going to do, in my opinion.
And Tom, policies?
Well, yeah, policies. The policies that I support Hillary Clinton on is trying to make a college affordable for every child in this country that wants to go to college. Trying to raise the minimum wage so that when people work 40 hours, they can support themselves. You shouldn't work 40 hours and still have to get food stamps. And if that's happening, we're subsidizing corporations. She wants to revamp the healthcare law. The healthcare law did a lot to cover a lot of people, but obviously there are flaws and it needs to be fixed, and she wants to do that. She also has a depth of knowledge. She realizes that the United States of America can't default on its debt and say, okay, we're going to renegotiate our treasury bonds like Mr. Trump did, because basically the whole world's economy is based upon the good faith in of the United States government. If we say we're going to pay something, we're going to pay something. And we're not going to say to you borrowed you bought $1 million worth of treasury bonds, we're going to give you $900,000 for that, because that just blows the whole system. And it's government. I've been involved in local government since 2001, and it's easy to make a mistake when you're trying and you're knowledgeable. But if you don't have a background and you're not willing to learn the background, as you go up, the exponentially your mistakes cause bigger ripples in the stream. So, you know, this is the top prize. I'd like to see someone who had done other things before they, you know, I mean, he's a businessman, but, you know, all right, but he's, you know, he's never been elected and he's never been involved in government.
Let me ask you this. Is there anything that Donald Trump has put forth that you do agree with? And you have the same questions coming to you.
You know what, there was something. I got to think about this, but there was something.
We'll come back to it.
Come
John,
back
is
to
there
me.
something that
I
you've
remember
heard
being
from
shocked.
Hillary Clinton that you agree with?
I have to say no. I think the most important thing to worry about is ISIS and refugees coming in that are not vetted. If that's not taken care of, nothing else in the world matters. That if we don't have a safe country, all you have to do is look on the internet and see what's happening in Europe.
But vetting, well, let's go into that a little more.
It hasn't been done.
Vetting as opposed to kicking out? I mean,
No. To the best of my knowledge, 40,000 people are coming in at a time in the United States, unchecked. I've watched on television Border Patrol agents and heads of Border Patrol speak, and their hands are totally tied. They don't even get their name or anything from these people.
You know, that is different than what I've heard from people I know who live abroad who try to come into the United States.
I've watched it. I've watched it on TV.
Have you thought of what you were going?
No, it escapes me now.
I'm going to move on to a slightly.
I can take a guess as to what Tom was thinking, because of one thing I know that a lot of Clinton supporters were happy about Trump had to do with his maternity and paternity leave policies. And I don't know if that's what you were thinking
That might
of.
have been it.
But that was something that many Clinton supporters found attractive, and I think something certainly Hillary Clinton would pursue as well. So there are some things on both sides, because let's not forget, Donald Trump was a Democrat and then an independent before he was a Republican. And Hillary Clinton, by the same token, is a much more, and you as a Sanders supporter know this, is a much more moderate Democrat than a Bernie Sanders. And so certainly she's known, for instance, as much more hawkish than most Democrats.
Absolutely.
And that's something that many Trump supporters may find more attractive of her than, say, another potential Democrat who could have run.
No, I disagree with that. I personally.
Or she might be too hawkish for you.
Too hawkish for me, yes. I mean, I think the.
You don't think Donald Trump is hawkish?
No, I don't. I think what he's going to do is he's going to build up the military. We're at the personnel is down at the lowest levels since World War II. China and Russia has more ships and missiles and fighter jets than us. We're scrapping together
Isn't building military part of?
I'm just sorry. We have by far the largest navy of any navy. All the other navies combined don't equal our navy.
But our lowest total personnel of Air Force, Army, Marines, and Navy is less than World War II.
Yeah, well, we're not in a war. You know,
but this I think the times that we're in are the worst times since Vietnam.
All right, I'm going to pivot to an area that I'm curious about, and Jeannie, I'm going to you on this one, which is, you know, this is an historic election. We have a woman running for president. Something, I mean, I guess I grew up not even thinking about becoming president, because everyone said that will never happen. And I've heard many much older women, I mean in their 90s and close to 100, who grew up in an era where women didn't have the right to vote initially, or had just gotten the right to vote, who are very excited. But I'm not hearing that from millennials, or even from much older people like me.
Yeah.
What's that about? I'm shocked.
Yeah, and it is, we should say it is a historic moment regardless of where you sit, especially for women, Republican or Democrat, that we have the first female who is a nominee of a major political party and, 5 days away from potentially being elected president. That is a huge moment because, of course, many democracies in the world have already elected a female executive, so we're behind the trend on that. That said, you're absolutely right. This has been something that has absolutely flustered and shocked the Clinton campaign, that millennials, particularly young women, don't see her gender or the idea of electing a female president as something that is going to move them to her side necessarily, or see a lot of excitement around that. And I don't know if we know yet why. I mean, I have a few theories. One is actually a positive thing, which is that many young women who are millennials feel that, of course I can be president. I can be whatever I want. In other words, there's been success in the women's movement to the extent that they don't see this necessarily as, the moment that some older females may see it as, because they're living in very different times. So I think there truly is a generational divide there, that some young women have benefited from all the work of the women who have come before them and really feel like the challenge that older women have seen isn't something that they necessarily have had to deal with. So they see it in a very different way. And that's actually hard to accept, but it's a positive thing. It's a positive sign. So I think there's that theory is out there. We, again, don't know if it's true. And then, of course, there are other theories. There are many young women I talk to who don't like Hillary Clinton as a candidate because they don't think she has treated other women well. So there are those kinds of concerns there. There are many women who are millennials and Democrats who don't like her because they think she's too moderate, too conservative for them. So there's a lot going on there, but I do think that some of it has to do with a real serious generational divide that's hard for, women of other generations to accept.
Does anyone ever talk about that we have a woman candidate, but she got there essentially having gone through her husband?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I haven't heard that, and I was curious about it.
Absolutely, and this is the way that most women in the United States have ascended into politics, and
Correct.
actually not just the United States, but in politics across the world, is through a father or a husband or a brother or an uncle or a grandfather. I mean, your trivia question about the father and daughter mayoral team, and I won't say the answer because I guess I don't think it's been revealed yet, but that's how most women, certainly the first woman in the House, for instance. So that's how most women have ascended. So it is not at all shocking that's the way it has occurred. And I think we're going to continue to see that until and unless we have some real structural changes in this country. For instance, the aforementioned maternity care and paternity care. You have to have a bigger pool of women running. And women cannot run when they are in the childbearing ages if they don't have the support to be both mothers and parents and to run. And that support has to be not just in the home, but in the country as a whole. So we need those structural changes to get the pool bigger so more women run, not just women
Trump is
who are,
gonna
which is
endorse.
something
Trump
Trump has endorsed. So it's a good moment. So there's all of that to consider and contend with.
Can I just throw in something? I went to the Republican convention, and I wasn't invited inside the convention, but I went to rallies. I attended rallies, and I met a fabulous woman who's a medical doctor who was running against John McCain. For the life of me, I can't remember her name. But I saw this woman, if she would have won in a couple of years, I could see her becoming a vice president. She was that outstanding and that much.
That was in a Republican primary she was running against?
Yeah. But she made such a big influence and she was just, an outstanding, the way she carried herself, the way she spoke, the way she looked like she cared. She wasn't too extreme either way. She was a nuts and bolts candidate.
Do either of you, John and Tom, feel like your parties have left you?
This is something I've thought about a lot. I do feel, and one of the reasons I'm involved as a Democrat is I do feel that the Democrats used to be the party, and out of the two still are, the party that focused on the middle class, the struggling classes, and made constant efforts to try and level the playing field and give people who are lower middle class, a chance to ascend. Through things like Pell Grants, through things like, supporting unions so that people can work hard and move forward in life. I think somewhere along the way, my party kind of took that too much for granted and stopped caring about so much the concerns of working people and people who were struggling and started being concerned more with the concerns of people who worked on Wall Street, people who were investment bankers, people who gave them a lot of money. And I think that the money in politics is an infection. And in my opinion, the worst thing that's happened in a long time was the Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. And it's just opened the floodgates of money. And, it's hard for normal working people or people that represent normal working people to have a voice, because you're drowned out by the cacophony of nonsense that comes across every year in election time.
Can I address that?
Absolutely.
I totally feel left out from the party. Actually, I don't consider myself a Republican. I consider myself a common sense patriot. That's what I label myself as. But aside from any other labels, I don't agree that I'm a Republican, except that I'm voting. I need to be a Republican in order to vote for Trump in the primaries. Also,
I mean, you have a party where a lot of the Republican Party isn't supporting the candidate, at least not
no, there are
outwardly.
people, and vice versa. I mean, there are Democrats that are going to be supporting Trump too, to a certain degree.
But it's not been as vocal. So I'm just asking. That's why I asked if you felt like your party had left you.
But also, Trump's base is the working class, middle class. He focuses on the working class and the middle class. Every time he speaks on TV, I don't think I miss a time that he has spoken. If it's not live, then it's recorded afterwards. But he always addresses the middle class. He's afraid of losing the middle class. That's why he's running. That's his main reason for running, is because he's afraid that the middle class is
You think he can relate to the middle class?
I think people call him the working class billionaire. He doesn't speak like a billionaire. He doesn't act like a billionaire. I mean, he buys whatever he wants, does whatever he wants, but he carries himself like a middle class person, in my opinion.
Okay, Jeannie, this is for you. Is our essentially two main political party system in trouble?
No, I don't think so. I think in the long term, what we've seen historically is that there are ebbs and flows in support for the parties, and third-party movements rise, and usually they are co-opted by one of the major parties. But I think, people have said, oh, is the Republican Party dead? No, it's not. It's going to find its footing again. Same thing with the Democratic Party. But I do think you've seen, and I think this is very true of the Republicans, and I think also increasingly true of the Democrats, is that they have lost touch with their base. And when you lose touch with your base, you're going to have a bad couple decades. And so, if you think about the Republican Party, the Tea Party movement grew during George W. Bush's administration. And, people have a very strong opinion about the Tea Party movement. But if you look back at what the original Tea Party was saying, they said, we elected this man and he let us down. He said smaller government, he made bigger government. He said smaller deficits, they grew. He said no foreign entanglements, we were in war. And the list goes on, and they were very frustrated, and they expressed their frustration, and the Republican Party refused to listen or adapt. And that is carried them through, and I think is partly responsible for the birth and the growth of somebody like a Donald Trump, who people are attracted to because he's not part of the traditional establishment Republican Party. And I think we see something of the same populism at the other end with the birth and the growth of somebody like a Bernie Sanders, who was an independent until 3 weeks before the primaries. And so he is not a Democrat any more than Donald Trump in his adult life was a Republican. And he is somebody who has said to the Democratic Party, you have lost touch with who we are and who we should be, and I am going to remind you. And I think the Democratic Party is going to have to really try to listen to that more progressive end of its base, or they are going to have trouble in 4 and 8 years, just like Republicans have had this time around.
We must end it. The control room tells me we have to wrap this up.
We want to thank you for joining us. It's been a lively and interesting and respectful
civil
discussion. Exactly. Make sure everyone you vote.
Yes, and we've got more news coming up, so please stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
Welcome back to the Local Live. I'm Ken Reichman.
And I'm Steve Anastas.
This week, the sectional playoffs came to a close. Let's see if any of our local teams were able to come away with a championship. First, we'll take a look at the Rhinebeck boys soccer team. The top-seeded Panthers hosting Blind Brook in the Class B semifinals. Second half, it's Luis Galliano with a nice pass to Jack Sheldon and an even better finish for the only goal of the game that would send Rhinebeck to the final. The Panthers would meet Hastings there and drop the game by a 1-0 score, ending their season at 16-3. So, Steve, they get close, but not close enough to put the finishing touches on a championship.
In the playoffs, one bounce can make or break your season. That's just the nature of the beast. But we have one more team left in contention, the two-time defending state champion Mamaroneck field hockey team. Another tightly matched semifinal, Tigers hosting Horace Greeley. Off a corner early in the second half, Elizabeth Brissett finds Paige Danahy, who drills it home, 1-0 Tigers. But the Quakers keep the pressure on. They would earn not one, not two, not even three, but 4 consecutive penalty corners after time expired. And the 4th time is the charm for Mamaroneck. They clinch the win and a spot in the final against rival Scarsdale. Ken, take us through it.
Two teams, Steve, that split 2 regular season meetings meet in a grudge match up in Brewster. 10 minutes in, the Raiders try and generate on a rush, but Tiger goalie Charlotte Mackey is all over it to keep the game scoreless. At the end of the half, Scarsdale picks up a penalty corner, and it's Erin Nicholas who blasts it home, 1-0 Raiders at halftime. The Tigers would have their chances in the second half. Here, it's Bridget Knowles with a try on net, but Raider goalie Leela Horwood with a beautiful kick stop to preserve the 1-0 lead for Scarsdale. Later on, Scarsdale looking for more insurance. Mackey makes the initial stop, but Emma Schwartz on the doorstep, able to bang it home to make it 2-0 Raiders, and that would be all she wrote. Scarsdale able to unseat the defending state champion Tigers, who finished the season at 15-2-2. And really, Steve, that's some kind of season for a Tiger team that only had 4 seniors on the roster.
And you know, Scarsdale hadn't beaten Mamaroneck before this season since 2004. So they really showed them something this season. The underclassmen got a taste of the glory last year. Now they experience the loss. You have to figure they're set up for another title run next year.
Certainly, Steve, and that'll do it for us this week. Remember to tune in to LMC TV this weekend or log on to lmctv.org to watch all of our highlighted games in their entirety. I'm Ken Reichman.
And I'm Steve Anastas. Stay tuned for more community stories on The Local Live.
You're watching The Local Live,
the only news show on Larchmont and Mamaroneck on LMC TV.
Now I'd like to introduce you to Chrissy. Chrissy is about 5 years old and is a Maine Coon mix. Chrissy is kind of a no-nonsense cat and isn't much of a cuddler. She would be a great housemate to any adult who will let her be her. For more information on how to adopt Chrissy or browse other adorable pets, go to www.ny-petrescue.org. We want to give a quick shout out to the Gales here in the studio tonight. 8 Iona College students stopped by to check out the show. Alex and I have a special spot in our hearts for them as we're both Gales ourselves. So thanks for coming by, everyone.
Remember, if you'd like to keep us on the air, support our program by checking out our website at www.lmctv.org and click the donate button in the upper right corner. We really appreciate any contribution.
We are always welcoming new interns and volunteers, so send your emails to thelocallive@lmctv.org and join us. We love hearing from you. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Kayla Coughlin.
And I'm Alexandria Garcia. See you next week for another episode of The Local Live.